Is suffering God's punishment? Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins. We are in the Gospel of John and we are starting chapter 9 this week. So let's read our big portion together and then we'll go back and we'll take just verses 1 to 3. But for the moment, for Monday through Wednesday this week, we're doing John 9, 1 to 12. We'll read that passage every day. So let's get going. Speaking of Jesus, it says, as he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this was so that the works of God might be manifested in him. We must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spat on the ground, made clay out of the saliva, and rubbed the clay on his eyes, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went away and washed and came back seeing. Therefore, the neighbors and those who had previously seen him as a beggar were saying, is this not the one who used to sit and beg? Others were saying, this is he. Still others were saying, no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I am the one. So they were saying to him, were your eyes opened? He answered, the man who is called Jesus made clay and rubbed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So when I went away and I washed, I received sight. And they said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. Woo. So if you're doing this with us every day, this is for February 10th, 2025. John 9, 1 through 3 is where we are going to be focusing our little devotional today. And the topic is suffering God's punishment? So let's just go back and read real quick, just the first 3 verses, and we'll go to work on those. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this was so that the works of God might be manifest in him. Now, blindness was a reality far, far more in this day than it is for us today. Not unusual. And when people were blind, whether born blind or became blind through an illness or an accident, they had really no way to support themselves. And so they would sit along the side of the road or at the gate of the city and they would beg for alms, for money. Sometimes they would position themselves outside of a religious area like a temple or something so that people would feel like a little guilty and they would support them. And that was how they made it. So this man, being blind from birth, would have had a truly wretched life. First of all, in this Jewish culture at this time, if something were wrong with you, you had an illness, a disability, if you will, you were considered cursed by God. Not only that, but you were ritually unclean, which means you could never go into the temple area. You were not invited to the festivities, the synagogues, things like that, because you were unclean and you were cursed by God. So they really had this outcast mentality, no compassion for the people who were the neediest in their society. You also notice that the disciples forget that this guy can hear. He's not deaf. He's just blind. And so, presumably, not much out of earshot, if at all, they say, whose fault is this anyway? Is it his fault? Or did his parents do something wrong? Born blind? How could it possibly be his fault? This was the mentality, though. Like, you had to have done something, or this wouldn't be happening to you. It's kind of like karma today. If you know me, you know karma is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's not a real thing. But I don't have time to get into that. But let's talk about what I call Christian karma, because Christians can have the same exact kind of take on suffering and people's plights, but it has a Christian twist on it. And the Christian twist is God is punishing you. God is getting you back for something. He's disciplining you. You must have done something wrong or this wouldn't be happening. I just finished up in my own personal reading time, reading through the entire book of Job. I haven't done that for a very long time because it's a tough book to get through. But this is exactly what Job went through. There was a purpose in his suffering that we, the readers, are privy to, but Job is not at the time. And his friends come along and say, don't you try to tell us that God isn't punishing you, because he clearly is. What did you do? What did you commit that God would have to discipline you like this? And that is oftentimes what happens. So let's talk really quickly. Why is there suffering? Like, what's the purpose of this? Does God ever punish us or discipline us? Maybe is a better way of putting it. Well, 1 Corinthians 11:31b says, we are disciplined by the Lord so that we will not be condemned along with the world. That, other words, there are times when, yes, God uses difficulties in our lives to take us off of a track and get us back onto the correct track, or to help us not do whatever we were doing again. And if you've ever been disciplined by God, you're normally, you know it. Like, you just got spanked, right? It's happened to me. Not a fun time, but I'm grateful when it's over that God loves me enough to discipline me. But there's another possibility for suffering. And that is what Jesus simply says, that this is what he says, so that the works of God might be manifested in this man. In other words, he was born for this. God ordained it so that God could do something specific through his life. God has every right to do anything he wants with any one of us that he wants to. He's the creator. He can do it. We don't typically like it when it's not comfortable, but God has such purpose in our suffering, even though it's uncomfortable for us. And I say this because I know many of you listening, you are suffering in some way right now. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your finances, maybe it's a relational problem between a husband and wife, or your children, or a sibling, or whatever. But whatever it is, we live in a fallen world. All of us suffer in some way most of the time. And sometimes it's up and sometimes it's not quite so bad. So I just want you to know, if you're suffering, there is a very good possibility that God is doing something in you and through you that he wants to accomplish, and this is his vehicle to accomplish it. If you think of suffering as more of a vehicle and less of like just consuming who you are, it's a little easier to deal with it. Back in 2011, our family went through the worst time we've ever been through. I won't get into it, but suffice it to say, it was a full-on clear satanic attack on our world. And it was the scariest thing I've ever been through. And I hated every single second of it more than I could even put into words. And I remember at a given point, it lasted about a year, just saying to myself, this is not going to go away real soon. God is, for whatever reason, he has ordained this. And so my prayer just became, okay, let's consider this a vehicle, a means to an end. And I said, God, I don't like it, but whatever you're doing, please just don't waste the pain. Don't waste the pain. Whatever the pain is I'm going through right now, please use it to the maximum for your glory and for my good. Can you pray that today as well? Lord, the pain is a vehicle. I don't know where it's going. I don't always know where it's going to arrive, but I'll consider a vehicle. Don't waste it. Use this pain in my life, my family's life, for your glory and for my good. And then watch what he does, because God is faithful. And I promise you will turn around someday. You will look in the rearview mirror and you will say, I see the hand of God in that. Even if it's painful, even if it's something you don't ever want to go through again, you will be able to see God in your life, working through that pain and suffering. Well, join me tomorrow because we're going to keep trekking through John chapter 9. This is such a fascinating story. Oh, I love John chapter 9. So I hope you'll be with us. We make these videos go live every morning, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. on YouTube and Facebook, Bible Study Hub. I will see you then. Until then, have a wonderful day.